is no longer crazy over getting wealth. He's satisfied with what he has. He's called God's name over what he's had, and therefore there is an integral relationship between the mezuzah and the repair of wealth, which removes from us the appetite for gain. And through this, the shine of the eternal God is with us through the keeping of God's covenant, and through the mezuzah, it is possible also to attain the level of that Zevulun should rejoice in his going out. And thus, our Chachamim said that when it's written in the Torah about the mitzvah of mezuzah, uchsavtom, that the ksiva, the writing, should be tamo. Uchsavtom, it should be a perfect script in the mezuzah. There should be no flaw in the mezuzah. And this is bound up conceptually with the idea of Yaakov that we had earlier. That Yaakov himself is called Ish Tam. We already saw that Yaakov, the panim of Kedusha, the face of Kedusha, is the level of emes. And this is all bound up with the concept of the mezuzah, bringing this tamimus, this emes, into the very home. And this is all one concept of Yaakov encamping by the city of Shechem. He's gracing the city of Shechem. He's rectifying the currency, rectifying the idolatry. And accordingly, the Chachamim said that length of days comes about through mezuzah. When you ensure that you have kosher mezuzah, you respect the mitzvah of mezuzah, you are aware of the mitzvah of mezuzah, this brings about arichus yomim, the length of days, because in the Torah, in the second paragraph, Shema, right after the pasuk, uchsavtam, it's written immediately, lema'an yir b'yemechem, that your days should be multiplied. And the reason is because through bringing emunah into our financial and parnasa activities, we are attaching ourselves to the light of life. And for this reason, the reason why the mezuzah is put in the upper third of the doorway is because Chachamim said that a person's money should be divided into three. A person should have a third, ideally in real estate, a third invested in the stock market, hopefully in better times than now, and a third of ready cash. Well, Halavai, we should have any one of those three. But the reason why the mezuzah is put in the upper third, which corresponds to the masa umatan, to the actual investments and the business money, the Chachamim said that a person should put 1/3 into pragmatia, into some business that has the chance of bringing a return. It is precisely in masa umatan, precisely in this kind of the to and fro of business dealings with other people, we need the most emunah, because the emunah is hardest when you're actually dealing with people who have free will, and you have to constantly know that even though they do have free will and they do all kinds of things that you might have wanted to do, you have to have the emunah. This is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this is the hardest test, is not so much in where there's real estate, and the test of emunah is not when you have money in your hand. It's really when you're engaged in your business dealings, and this is the top challenge corresponding to top third of the gateway, and that's precisely where we need to have the mezuzah. And Reb Nachman writes that any mitzvah that you carry out without having to pay any money, namely that you don't want to lose money for the sake of that mitzvah, that is simply called, when you do that mitzvah, that's called tzedek. You're doing something that is right, it's proper. And the pasuk in Psalm says, "Tziviso tzedek edoisecho emuna ma'od." In Psalm 119, one of the verses in this alphabetical psalm is, "Tziviso tzedek edoisecho." You have commanded your testimonies as righteousness. The testimonies, the mitzvahs are tzedek, they are righteous, but there's something else that's even more, emuna ma'od. Very, very much emunah. When a person loves the mitzvah so much, when the mitzvah is so precious to the person that he doesn't mind, he doesn't feel the expenditure of the money on the mitzvah, then when he breaks his appetite for holding on to his wealth for the sake of the mitzvah, and that is where the face of Kedusha really is. That is when, in the continuation of that verse from Tehillim, Emunah Ma'oid, the Emunah comes into the Ma'oid, B'kol Ma'oidecha, B'kol Ma'monecha, the Emunah comes into the real basis of our life, which is our money, which stands us on our feet. We're bringing money, we're bringing Emunah right there. So now Reb Nachman comes to darshan the Gemara that we started with, the riddles that were put to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hananiah by the elders of Athens. And they said to him, tell us something that is manifestly false. And he says, well, we had this mule that gave birth, and on the net, hanging around the neck of the little baby mule was this label that said, I've got to pay 100,000 zuz to the house of Abel. And they said, that's ridiculous. A mule doesn't give birth in the first place. How could there be a baby mule? And he said, well, you asked me for something that is patently false. And then they said to him, okay, the next riddle is like this. If the salt gets rotten, what's the cure? How do you salt the salt? And he said to them, well, bring the placenta of the mule.
Who is this? Which rabbi?
This is
which rabbi were we casting?
Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hananiah.
Okay.
Throughout the Gemara, you have Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua. This is the Rabbi Yehoshua of that machloitis, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hananiah. So they say to him, what do you do with, how do you salt to stop it from getting rotten? And he says, take the embryo, take the placenta of the mule. And they say, well, that's ridiculous. A mule has a placenta, a mule can't give birth. And he says, well, does salt ever go off? Salt never rots anyway, so what are you talking about? So now, after having, in true character, Reb Nachman built up all these structures of concepts for us about the tikkun, the repair of wealth, he says, now let's look again at the words of the elders of Athens. They said to him, tell us something false. Well, real falsehood, that is avodah zarah. Idolatry, that is total falsehood. Reb Nachman says the whole debate here is about idolatry. Chachamim said, it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, if somebody so much as tells a sheker, tells a lie, it's as if he worshipped an idol. All those little fibs and white lies that are told in business, all that is also idolatry. So they said to him, explain to us what is idolatry. And he says to them, well, we had this mule, and the mule gave birth to a baby mule. Well, the mule is the concept of the idol and the idolatry. In Hebrew, the mule is called a pirda. And the pirda comes from the root pered, which is from the root of division, lipared. Misham nifridol Amarashim, the river in Genesis, comes into four streams. So this is the whole concept of idolatry that leads only to separation. It leads to plurality, to polytheism, to the denial of the absolute unity of God. So the concept of the mule giving birth is a concept of making a profit. The mule, you get a mule for business purposes, and if an animal gives birth, that is profit. In Hebrew, throughout the halacha, the concept of profit is peiros. Peiros is either fruits of the tree or the produce or the fruits of animals. So the idea in the discussion between the elders of Athens and Rabbi Yehoshua is we're talking about can this idolatry, which is the mule, the pered, which is parud, separated from the unity of God, can it? What is the meaning of the profits that it gives forth? So when he said to them that there was such a mule that gave birth, they say about him, that's ridiculous. How could a mule ever give birth? And what they were admitting was that idolatry, which is the eil acher, is neutered. It is castrated. Idolatry, this wealth can never give you real peiros. It will never give you enduring profit, enduring benefit ever. Because this falsehood of